Chapter 1. Somewhere outside of the Wharf 9 quarantine district. Point of view, Silver Kren. Silver kept her head down, and her hands busy. She was there to reassure the people, not terrify them by letting them see fear in the eyes of those sent to help. The scent of old rope and fish pervaded every tavern, inn and shop she visited from the bay, all the way up to the military fortress of the Umbral Aegis. She hated it. Even before the sickness, the rest of Telnera spoke of the port with casual contempt. The city was necessary when cargo came in, and distasteful the moment it didn't. She walked through the dockside neighborhoods of Wharf 9, observing the people trying to survive, walking around too afraid to touch a doorknob or shake a friend's hand. She didn't blame them. She was scared too. She felt it in her teeth when a mother tried to swallow a sob, felt it in her ribs when a man lied about a sore because he'd rather gamble with contagion than face enforced quarantine. She just had the tools to do something about it. Silver and the runner reached her team waiting at the temporary headquarters of the Reclaimers' relief effort. His breath steamed in the stairwell, and his hair was plastered to his skull. Wharf 9, Northeast Quadrant, he wheezed. Grey rot outbreak. Flood wardens are already blocking the streets, and the Aegis quarantine rigs are moving to expand the ward line. Silver's expression darkened. They had sealed the adjacent district tight. It shouldn't have hopped the wards. Someone missed something. How did they find out? She asked. It started with talk in the taverns, but no one trusts a damn thing they say. When the Tanners Guild came forward, they knew it was serious. The cogfuckers should have listened the first time. 2 men dropped in the alley outside the Salty Lady within minutes of their report. Now the Aegis is racing to get in front of anyone trying to skip being locked in. The runner swallowed once, then continued. One look from the medical examiners answered any doubt. It's broken containment again. Bram closed his eyes and tilted his head up. The big man always took this kind of news hard. Men found dead on the ground meant they had been contagious too long to trace their contact trail. The runner went on, having gained control of his breath. I'd hate to be in charge of trying to take enough of the district to be sure they catch all the infected. Explain that to all the healthy people trapped inside. It's a death sentence to a lot of them, Bram said. He nodded, indicating they needed to move. They couldn't do anything about exposure, but they could increase the survival rate in the quarantine zones. Pack water and cloth, Bram said. Bandages and burn cream. Branding rods. And the shards to power them. Kieran reached for a crate, knocking his shin on the corner, and hissing. Silver caught his wrist before he could upend a nearby stack of supplies onto the floor. Slow is smooth, Kieran, she said. Her voice remained low so the others couldn't hear. She didn't want him to feel like he was being scolded. If you drop a crate, you don't just waste what we have. You risk cutting yourself. No reason to give the disease an easy way in. Kieran flushed. I know. Silver softened her expression and gave him a smile that was more reassurance than approval. Just because she shouldn't have to fight his ego didn't mean it wasn't more effective to accommodate it. Then take your time, she said. You're too important to our mission to get sick. They moved through the lower streets of Harbour's Edge toward the residential slums near the water. The closer they got to the docks, the more the humidity wrapped them in a blanket of their own sweat. Stone gave way to patchwork paving as the boundary of the city's attention faded. Silver drew her cloth higher over her nose as the mud belched fish brine and human excrement from her boot prints. The filth of the slums only helped grey rot spread. She paused to let the patrol of flood wardens pass on their way to kit up for crowd control as they enforced the new quarantine boundary. In normal times, they were the garrison troops of the Umbral Aegis, assigned to police and protect a city-state when the war wasn't at its doorstep. Now they became soldiers in the fight against grey rot. Only now, their opponent couldn't be killed with a steam gun. It had to be slowed with enforced curfews, quarantine cordons, and by keeping the machinery of the city-state moving while the larger war went on around it. You there, Warden? A man called. One of them turned, his annoyance plain on his face, then paused. He forced a smile as his partner looked at him in confusion. Elector Joff, good day to you. We have been called to respond to an urgent outbreak, so we really must be going. Yes, I will only take a moment. I have a duty to report on the happenings in districts adjacent to us. I want you to make certain that you have them set the boundaries very conservatively. I can't have this outbreak affect warehousing. If you end up quarantining my district, you lock 20% of the city's sundries. Do the math, soldier. More will die of hunger than you will lose by widening your wards. Elector, I am not in charge of those decisions. You know that, the warden replied. He shifted from one foot to another, but kept his voice impressively professional. You have superiors, yes. Joff persisted. Make them understand. They have a history with me, and I remember my friends. Just do as I say, all right? Of course, Elector Joff. We really must be going, though. They turned and rushed off before the conversation could continue. Fine. Just tell him, Joff called out, and let him know that I am working on clearing up those delayed rations. I should have a resolution around the time they report back to me. Silva shook her head. The Reclaimer's role may not be glamorous, but they generally answered only to themselves. The wardens formally fell under Aegis command, but they also had to work with God's rusted government officials like this, because day-to-day life was directed by bureaucracy. The city-states donated the recruits and provisions that kept the war going. Neither could afford to let Greyrot tear through the districts of Harbor's Edge, and they all had to work together to prevent it. A warden captain checked the Reclaimer team's badges as they passed into the quarantine perimeter checkpoint. Stick to your burns and bandages, Greycoat, he said. No interference in the quarantine. The real soldiers are handling it. Silva didn't look back. She kept walking, head down. Then mind your walls, Bram said. We'll handle the people trapped inside. 3 blocks from the waterfront, she began to hear coughing. Her head turned to track where the noise came from. She almost never actually saw someone cough, though. Silva could understand thought behind it. If I don't make noise, maybe no one will know. She wanted to tell them that hiding only made the fire spread. Instead, she kept her pace, steady. Ward work had trained her to catalogue distance, airflow, and crowd density by reflex. Her mind started running the math. How many end up dying each time someone successfully hid symptoms? Seal check, Silva said. The team had already started the procedure, but repetition trained minds to rise above distraction and follow the steps that kept them safe. The suit went on in layers. She pulled on the inner layer, a smooth material that clung from wrists to ankles and held heat the way oilskin held rain. Sweat gathered at the small of her back as the air inside the suit stagnated. Next, she attached her headgear, pulling the rigid collar so it seated over the shoulders. The hood and mask assembly, locked in with brass latches. The faceplate goggles were 2 thick panes of glass set tightly into metal. She knew anyone looking at her could see her eyes behind the glass and very little else. At the throat, a filter core sat in a brass housing like a small furnace turned inward. A shard was slotted into it, and when it engaged, the filter produced a steady, low hum that vibrated up the collar. Each inhale pulled through the core, each exhale pushed out through a narrow vent seam. Finally, she checked the shard itself and made sure the spare was in her satchel, wrapped in oilcloth so it wouldn't chip if she hit the ground. Power loss midway through a quarantine run meant being exposed. Kieran was still adjusting his collar with gloved hands, awkwardly trying to reposition it. The rings in the gear tended to press against the throat. Try to leave it alone, Silva said, watching him. If you articulate it too much, you could break the seal. If you feel a draft at your neck, stop and tell me. Bram turned his head, scanning the street ahead. Behind the glass, his expression was hidden, but his eyes were steady. Silva hated what the gear did to the way people saw them. The rigs made them look more like executioners than saviors. They became silent figures in sealed skins. In doorways and on stoops, people stared as the trio passed, their fear sharpening the longer they watched. The masks gave the crowd nothing to hold onto but their eyes, and that wasn't enough to reassure someone who knew they had to bite back screams as inhuman figures burned their sores closed. The plague procedures weren't mercy for the sick. They were arithmetic for the city. Silva didn't resent the math. She resented the way the Aegis acted like the numbers were all that mattered. Cog fucking Greyrot makes monsters of us all.